Let's begin using GasMan. First, let's select an anesthetic agent that we would like to use, and the first simulation we will do with Sevoflurane. Once we've set Sevoflurane, notice that its color is set to black. That was because on the screen, yellow does not show up as nicely as I would like, and I actually chose black in order to make it more visible. We are choosing a 70 kilogram patient with a semi-closed circuit running at 60 times real time. Here's the GasMan picture, and I'll click on the tab for the graph, and we will now have a graph. Let's first do a very simple anesthetic where we set the fresh gas flow to 5 liters per minute. We presume that the patient is under general anesthesia after propofol, and we'd like to get the patient deep. We'll begin by setting the vaporizer to 5%, the fresh gas flow to 5 liters a minute, and I'm going to click Run. As I click Run, I'm now going to pause when we see the alveolar compartment, that is the end tidal concentration as we see on the monitor, and the alveolar in the patient, reach 1 Mach at the dotted line. At this point, notice that the vessel-rich group is only up about halfway to the dotted line of 1 Mach. If we interpret our anesthetic as being end tidal is the patient's depth of anesthesia, we will be totally wrong. So we are smart enough to go ahead from here, but I shall set a bookmark at this point so that if we want to play it back, pausing when alveolar gets to 1 Mach, we can do that. I'm going to click Run once more time. And pause again when the vessel-rich group gets to 1 Mach. Notice that on the graph, we are now beyond the 5 minutes of the view that was shown initially, so we should open this to a 10-minute view or a 15-minute view, which is as I'm doing now. At this point, we see that inspired rose, expired rose, and the vessel-rich group got to 1 Mach at about 6 3/4 minutes. I'll set a bookmark again by clicking the bookmark icon. Add bookmark at 6 minutes and 41 seconds. Just hit enter twice and it's locked in that way. At this point, a smart anesthesia care provider would turn down the vaporizer, possibly turn down the fresh gas flow as well, and also turn that down to exactly 2 liters per minute, and continue running with the vaporizer set at 3%. Let's see what happens. It looks as though we're keeping inspired and expired and vessel-rich group pretty well at 1 Mach, and we've done a pretty good job. Let's take a look at what we have done so far with quantity of anesthetic. We have delivered 11.87 milliliters of anesthetic liquid, and the patient has taken up 2.2 milliliters of liquid. The cost of this anesthetic at this point was $3.56, with the patient taking up 66 cents worth of drug. Let's carry this now out to a longer anesthetic, leaving the fresh gas flow in the vaporizer setting almost where they were, but going down a little bit on the vaporizer. As we saw in an earlier simulation, that the tail of the alveolar tension curve requires us to turn down the vaporizer over time. So I shall set this to 2.5% and continue running out, watching the curve of inspired and expired and alveolar stay fairly constant. It's falling a bit, but I believe we will be okay. We see expired and inspired falling little bits at a time. I shall turn the vaporizer up to 3% in order to bring these levels back up again to where we want them. Inspired will rise, expired will rise, and so will the vessel-rich group. So by observing our monitors of inspired and expired, we're able to control the anesthetic level, although in this case we did this all in simulation. At the end of 1 hour, we can keep vaporizer setting possibly where it was, and as you just saw, I set the view to 2 hours, and now I shall stop it briefly and hold down the shift key, and when I do that, it will go as fast as possible out to that 2-hour point. Notice that again we have kept the anesthetic level at a very constant perfect 1 Mach, and we've done this now for 2 hours. When it's time to wake this patient up, what we would like to do is look carefully at the impact of fresh gas flow and, of course, the vaporizer being turned off. So first I shall turn the vaporizer off. Next I shall turn up the fresh gas flow, and I might even hit the flush button to get the inspired to go down very well right away. In this case, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to run it at this same speed. Inspired is falling and expired is falling, and I'm going to hit the stop or pause button for a moment. I'd like us to zoom in on this period of time. So instead of looking at 2 hours, we're going to look at only the current 10 minutes. And I also notice that all of our graphs are fairly low because they go up all the way to 8% at the top. For me to be able to rescale this picture and graph, all I need to do is to go to the top of the vaporizer dial. The top of the dial, not the current setting, and notice there is a box around it, meaning it is settable. I shall set that to 3% by typing in the number 3, and now all of a sudden the whole picture and graph are demonstrated to focus in on what we are doing at this moment. I shall look carefully at this with you as we see inspired has come down following my arrow, alveolar has come down, and the vessel-rich group has just reached 0.87. That's approximately 1/3 of MAC, and this is approximately the time a patient will open his or her eyes. If we wanted to have the inspired fall a little bit better, because we notice it rising here, and the alveolar keeping it down at this point, and the patient is not quite extubated at this moment, we could press the flush button at any point and continue the motion of this anesthetic. The patient has been awake now for several minutes, and we notice that the alveolar to vessel-rich group time is approximately 3 minutes. That is the brain delay.